Hey folks, this is Dave. Welcome to the basement. So August is just about wrapping up, so I thought I would share with you the handful of CDs that I've added to the collection over the course of the month. Starting out with Finer Than Sin by Enough's Enough. This came out in 2022 on Frontiers Music. It's the band's 17th album. As far as I can tell, it has not been released on vinyl yet. Could have just missed it, but that seems kind of strange in this day and age. But anyway, so Enough's Enough, hair metal band out of Illinois. They've been around since the 80s, which kind of speaks to the whole fact that this is their 17th album. Had a huge number of lineup changes since then, since their origination, with Chip Z'Nuff, frontman, founder, being kind of the only constant throughout. Interesting thing on the lineup side of things with this album is Dax Nielsen, who is the son of Cheap Trick's Rick Nielsen, guests on drums on a couple of the songs. So I thought that was pretty cool. Songs you might want to check out if you haven't heard anything off of this album yet. Steal the Light. It's got a very Beatlesque sound, particularly when it comes to the vocal harmony. So I enjoyed that. That was just kind of a standout track. Hurricane is another song that I think it's the longest one on the album. There's no track times on here, but I remember it being quite longer than the others. But anyway, kind of lengthy, but it's very melodic, very atmospheric. That's enjoyable. And then they do a cover of God Save the Queen, which it's a pretty decent rendition. Obviously nowhere near the original, but still, it's good listen. Yeah, overall, I thought this was a quite enjoyable album. Chip's vocals aren't quite as edgy as they have been in the past, which, I mean, I get it. We all get older and things happen. So, I mean, that's just kind of a minor gripe. But also the music just doesn't feel as sharp. It feels a little overproduced, I think. And that's, I attribute that to Frontiers, because that's kind of their shtick. But I don't know. Anyway, if you're a fan of Enough's Enough, there's no reason not to get this album. If you're not familiar at all with them, probably stick to their older stuff, the 80s stuff, for sure, over this. But it's definitely, if you're a fan of hard rock in general, or aging hair metal bands, no reason not to pick this one up. So Finer Than Sin by Enough's Enough. All right, next up is Notice of Disconnection by Mainline. This came out in 2006 and it was self-released by the band. This was their second and final album, not on vinyl. Mainline were a post-punk band out of California with a sound that's very reminiscent of, or shows a lot of influence from, Killing Joke. Overall, this is not a bad album. I mean, I enjoy the sound, I enjoy Killing Joke, but it's really pretty one-dimensional most of the time. If you're looking for a Killing Joke clone or Killing Joke light, this would be a band to check out, and that's okay. That's not bad at all. But occasionally there still are some bright spots. There's, as if the rest of it isn't a bright spot, but still there are some occasional guitar flourishes, like on the track Garbage Heap, if you can find that one. There's some really thrashy riffs on there, lots of energy. If they could have built on that more, I think that this would have been a much higher than average album. But as it is, it's okay. So like I said, if you're into the post-punk sound of like Killing Joke, clearly Killing Joke, then if you can find this one, it wouldn't be worth, or it would be worth picking up. Don't pass it up. Yeah, this is Notice of Disconnection by Mainline. So in some of my previous videos, I've talked about the fact that I'm a fan of the swing revival sound, Brian Setzer Orchestra kind of bands. And this album I came across and picked it up just for one particular song, which I've always enjoyed. And I'm talking about Squirrel Nut Zippers' album Hot. Came out in 1996 on Mammoth Records, and it was their second album. And I picked this up for the song Hell, which I just think is a great song. Really fun song. I've always enjoyed that. But never have had this album in the collection until now, obviously. Obviously it's in the collection now, but have never had it in my hands prior to this. But yeah, so Squirrel Nut Zippers, swing revival band out of North Carolina. Now they're much more than just that. They've got a lot of jazz elements, ragtime even, and so there's a lot more going on than just like I said, Brian Setzer. Another song on here that I really enjoyed besides Hell was Memphis Exorcism. It's an instrumental, but I really enjoyed the sound. It's really kind of a groovy song to just kick back with. But overall, I don't know. I much prefer like Cherry Poppin' Daddies or Atomic Fireballs to these guys. The ragtime stuff, which is really a strong element to their sound, it's just not my bag. So I'm going to keep this obviously for Hell, just because I like that song. But you know, they're just not going to rate up at the top of the bands of in this sort of sound, in this style, for me anyway. But maybe it would you if you're into that more old-timey than old-time. Yeah, so this is Mammoth by Squirrel Nut Zippers. This next one is one that I'm sure you all know and are very familiar with, but it's one that for one reason or another just never made it into my collection until now. And I'm talking about Contraband by Velvet Revolver. It came out in 2004 on RCA Records. It was the band's debut album, and again, for one reason or another, it just never made it in the collection until I found it in a library sale for like 50 cents. So here it is. And if you are not familiar for whatever reason with who Velvet Revolver is, it's kind of a super group of Scott Weiland / who else on here? Duff McKagan, Matt Sorum, Dave Kushner, I think is the other guy. And you know, if you're not familiar with their sound, which would be really weird if you weren't, but most of the songs are high energy, swirling guitars, great grooves. See, what I would say, if you need to check out what I'm talking about, a couple of tracks are Set Me Free and Slither, which was one of the hits off the album. That really speaks to what I'm talking about. This also has a rock ballad on here, Fall to Pieces, which I think was probably the biggest hit maybe off this album. I can't remember. But anyway, it's a really good album. Glad to finally have it in my collection, and I'm sure most of you already do have it in yours. So this is Contraband by Velvet Revolver. Okay, fourth album in, and finally bringing it local. And that is Resemblances by Somersault. Came out in 2002 on Suburban Sprawl, which was a label in Livonia, Michigan, or out of Livonia, Michigan. And Livonia is a suburb on the western edge of Detroit. And this was the band's only album and not released on vinyl. So CD only. And there's not a lot of info about the band out there, but they were a instrumental post-rock band from the Detroit area. Their sound, spacey guitars, lush keyboards, heavy bass, really kind of droney at times, mellow, soothing. Although there is one track on here, Minor Parade, that kind of amps up the energy, gives it sort of a, I don't know, comparison maybe to Thrice would be warranted. But not in general. You know, that's just typically just that one song. But yeah, it's okay. It's not a bad album, but it'll do the trick if that's what you're into and the mood for it. Anyway, so yeah, this is Resemblances by Somersault. And finally for today, keeping it obscure but going over to Europe this time. This is Turn Back Time by Everglow. Came out in 2005. It was self-released by the band. And this was their second release. It is not on vinyl. And yeah, so Everglow was a Belgian female-fronted metal band. They've got sort of, I don't know, there's some power metal elements to their music, kind of like you know, the galloping double bass, lilting keyboards, but it's not the kind of, it doesn't soar into the happy metal territory. There's definitely some heaviness, some heft to their music. Singer Cindy Barrett, Cindy. She's not operatic or theatrical at all. She's got a really solid mid-range vocal style. Actually, she probably would be just as successful fronting a new wave band as a metal band. So I mean, she really does a really good job. There's a couple of tracks on here, if you can find them, that will really kind of exemplify their sound. Loneliness, the first track, and Mystery. The last track on this is kind of an EP. I mean, it has, what's that, five tracks, but they are longish tracks, so it's like a half an hour or so listen. But anyway, the last track, The Escape, I thought was kind of cool because it starts off with some dialogue from Gone in 60 Seconds. Just, I don't know, just thought that was kind of cool. But anyway, this is definitely an above average band. Solid listen. I think they put out maybe one more EP and another album, potentially. Anyway, whatever they put out a couple more things. All of it self-released. Never got a record deal or of any sort. So, which is kind of weird as how interesting and how enjoyable this was. And then female-fronted metal in Europe in the early 2000s. Maybe there's just too much competition. I don't know. Anyway, I enjoyed it. This is Turn Back Time by Everglow. All right, that'll wrap up the CD additions to the collection for August. Maybe hope you saw something that was interesting to you. I know a couple of them were really obscure, but there were some that I'm sure most of you at least know about if you don't already have it in your collection. And if you got opinions on those, I'd love to hear it. So leave them in the comments. And I'm hoping to get another video out of Vinyl Update by the end of the month or towards the end of the month. So be looking forward for that. And yeah, till then, I will talk to you soon. Take care.